So with that said, I would like to move on, and so we'll go into our defining generative AI. So I am going to turn off my video at this time. I'll turn it back on at the end. I just want to make sure from a bandwidth standpoint, we're respectful of everyone's bandwidth. So I'm going to turn the video off, but we'll obviously keep the audio on. So let's, before we define generative AI, let's start by defining artificial intelligence. Many of you may obviously be familiar with the field of artificial intelligence, but the definition itself, there's still some disagreement what it is. But what's commonly accepted is the ability of machines to exhibit human-like intelligence and to do this in an autonomous fashion. So what does this mean? It means that a machine can approximate things we can do as humans and do it without human interaction. So the ability to make a prediction, the ability to remove a robotic arm, the ability to generate, as we'll learn with generative AI, novel content, whether that's text, images, etc. Those are all forms of all forms of artificial intelligence. Again, the ability for machines to do things that we as humans can do, but without the requirement of human having to interface with that machine to complete the task. So that's the generally accepted definition of artificial intelligence. Generative AI, or generative artificial intelligence, is a relatively new type of artificial intelligence. I was speaking with a colleague earlier today, and 1 year and 13 days ago, none of us knew, or very few of us knew, what generative AI was, right? ChatGPT launched at the end of November of 2022. And it's radically changed the way we've engaged with artificial intelligence and specifically generative AI. And generative AI is defined as the ability for artificial intelligence to generate new, or what we call novel content. And that content can be text, images, music, and other as well. And so there's a number of platforms, ChatGPT, probably the most infamous, that actually provides these generative capabilities. But as we'll see, there's others. Google has Bard, that's now powered by their Gemini platform. ChatGPT is, although it's been integrated into Microsoft platforms, it's actually been developed by a company called OpenAI that has been invested in. Microsoft and others have invested in OpenAI. OpenAI also has other tools like ChatGPT. One's called DALL-E, which is, we'll see, as an image generator. And there's other platforms. So Meta, the parent company to Facebook and Instagram and others, they actually have, and WhatsApp, they actually have their own generative AI model. And there's others that are being developed around the world. Mistral, which is a French-based large language model or generative AI model, is also growing in use as well. But before we move on, I want to talk a little bit about what these generative AI models do and actually demonstrate briefly. Some of you probably have had, based on your poll, have had some exposure to these generative AI models. But again, what we're doing with these models is we're generating text. Again, ChatGPT, most of us are familiar with, but we can generate images, we can generate code, video, speech, and any other type of content that you can think of. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my browser briefly, and I'm going to ask someone just to put anything in ChatGPT, a topic you want to learn more about. So the first one to put in a topic, we'll learn more about that topic. So anything that's of interest to you, just type it into the chat window, and we're actually going to form a prompt here. So anyone interested in anything? Not, I'll just make something up. I'm not seeing any chats come in, so I will just make great. Okay, so artificial general intelligence. Godfrey wants to learn more. So let's say define general AI. And so what I've done is I've created a prompt, and that prompt is actually prompting the tool, in this case, the ChatGPT tool, And ChatGPT, it's not just like a search where it's just actually pointing me to existing text. It's actually generating novel or new content based on how it's been trained. So you can see I've actually now actually created a series of texts by just a simple prompt defining general AI. What if I said, and I should have done generative AI, I'm sorry. Oh no, we said artificial intelligence, general AI. So I've defined that. We'll actually talk about that in a second, what general AI is. So I have the ability to do that. What if I said, write a blog about general artificial intelligence? And now what I can do is, you can see it's writing a title, it's providing an introduction, and it's going to go through and it's going to write a blog. Now, this blog may not be exactly what I want, but it may give me a good foundation, and now I can just edit it as opposed to having to draft this from scratch. If I wanted to say, yeah, great, this is great, I have a blog post, now I want to do a social post of 256 characters about general artificial intelligence, I can now get a social post, right, that I could post to, X, formerly Twitter, or another platform, etc. Right, so you can see how I can do a variety of things by essentially learning how to create effective prompts. The other thing, what if I said, well, explain, what my audience is general. I want to explain general artificial intelligence, but I want to explain it to a younger, to youths. Let's say, someone, let's say 10 years of age. I can say, explain general AI to a young person. And now what it's going to do, it's going to still define it. But remember, when we defined it before, you could see bulleted lists, etc. And now you can see I've actually done some really simple, I've taken this and I've made it something that's available to a younger person, right? It's a super smart robot or computer, right? It's just not good at one task, but can learn, understand, etc., right? So that I can have the ability to do that. Now, so this is ChatGPT. Many of you are probably familiar with ChatGPT. And then some of you may be using Bard. So ChatGPT, the version that most people are using is GPT 3.5, which is the publicly available version. There is a commercial version of GPT, it's GPT-4, so it's a more capable model, although this is obviously very capable, as we've seen here. Bard is, again, produced by Google, and they've actually have recently updated this with their latest generative AI model behind it. And so let's just take another topic that we want to talk about here. How to make a training module I have for teacher training. So let's just say let's say a general teacher training module on general AI, right? So let's do this and now what you can see is here's a teacher training module on general artificial intelligence, right? We have a module overview, learning objectives, what is some of the content, what is, the modules, right? So we essentially have a table of contents. Now, is this exactly what I want? Probably not, but it's giving me a really good idea of the things that I may want to cover if I'm going to teach AI in the classroom, right? So it's telling me some of the things that I may want to do, some of the resources, how to assess, remember, et cetera, and some additional resources. Now, there's a lot of work I still need to do to build out a curriculum here, but this is giving me a really good foundation to start from. Now, I can use these tools to do things like generate code. So what if I said Python code for 3 variables, right? So I'm going to do an if-then statement. Let me do that today. If-then statement with 3 variables in Python. So I'm going to do Python code. So now what you're going to see here is you're going to see that I can actually develop some simple code. Now, does this make me a programmer? No, but if I'm a programmer, this could help me actually create the code. It actually tells me how it works, right? So it gives me some examples so I can better understand it as well. What if I'd say write comments for this code? I can say, you know what? So now you can say take that code, and no coding professional enjoys commenting code, but essentially, in this case, I can't do that. They want to see the code itself. So if I say write comments for a if-then statement with 3 variables in Python. And what this is showing is, again, prompting skills, right? I actually had to iterate, right? It said, no, hey, I can't do that. Well, it can do that. It just, I didn't give it the right information. So it's going to say, do certain things here. And now what we're seeing is with these coding, some of these are being built into the coding tools as well. And then the final example I'm going to go through here briefly is an image. What would you like to see an image of? Anything of any type of image, just something as far out and as unexpected as you would think of, just anything. If anyone wants to type anything in chat, if I don't see something in a couple seconds, I'll just type something. What if I say an astronaut? So an astronaut exploring the deep sea, right? So instead of exploring space, it's going to be an astronaut exploring the deep sea. And again, I'm being very descriptive here. I'm being very concise, and I'm going to elicit a response from the model that is actually going to provide me with a astronaut, right? Now you're seeing some astronauts, that he's in sea and in the space, right? You can see this one is actually in C, and you can see finally there's a realistic one over here as well. So again, I have the ability to start to, again, generate images from literally 6 words here that I typed in. I have an entire image, right? So these are some of the capabilities. Again, there's many more within generative AI. And as we'll learn, there's a whole set of skills that we have to learn called prompting. And that's when essentially we're prompting these models to actually provide us with a response. And as we get better at doing that, and again, it's just like performing a search, but with a much more sophisticated way, you'll get better responses from that model. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. And someone, thank you, talked about general artificial intelligence. So generative AI, right, is generative artificial intelligence, which is a type of artificial intelligence. As capable as generative AI and other artificial intelligence like deep learning, natural language processing, computer vision, etc., they're all still forms of what we call narrow artificial intelligence or narrow AI. This is where artificial intelligence really has no capacity for reasoning, right? As sophisticated as ChatGPT is, it doesn't know why it's making those decisions. It's been just trained to do that. And as you saw with ChatGPT, it can solve for one or a few designated problems. In this case, it can only produce text. ChatGPT can't produce images, it can't produce sound, it can't control a robotic arm, it can't do anything that a multitude of other AI models can do. So that's why we call narrow artificial intelligence. We have these really capable models, but they can't reason, and they typically can do one or maybe several things. And although they're approximating what we can do as humans, they really don't actually do everything we can as humans. And general AI is where artificial intelligence would have similar cognition as humans, and some say that they would be able to actually reason, understand why they're making those decisions. Google DeepMind, the DeepMind team, they have started to create a model which they believe can have some basic reasoning skills. It's doing some elementary math, and elementary math seems like, well, that isn't very sophisticated. I was just able to write a blog. But for them to actually calculate and determine, not only calculate, but actually determine how basic math works, that includes some reasoning. So, and also with general artificial intelligence, it's expected that it'd be able to solve a number of problems, not just one. We have not developed general artificial intelligence. Some say we may achieve it in the next 5 to 10 years. Some say we may never achieve it or may never want to achieve it. But again, as capable as generative AI is, it's what we consider narrow artificial intelligence today. So let's explore some applications of generative AI. The first thing what we need to understand is there's probably a bit of techno stress, although this group seems very positive because you look at generative AI providing more jobs. And in the end, it will. The World Economic Forum has made a prediction that, like many other major technologies, some jobs will move towards obsolescence, but there'll be more jobs created than lost. So there'll be a net gain in jobs. So the fact is that although the machines will replace some jobs, it's going to create many more. And in reality, most of us are going to just work with machines, right? Many times when I do this talk in person, I'll have people raise their hand and say, how many of you, were in the workforce before the mobile phone? And almost everyone raises their hand. And then I'll say, how many of you were in the workforce before the internet, right? And there's fewer hands. And then how many before computers, right? The fact is that in the past 75 years, 80% of our jobs are new jobs. They didn't exist 75 years ago. So you think about that. 3 out of every 4 jobs didn't exist in 1940, right? And as we move forward in the next decades, there'll be jobs that exist today that won't exist in the future, but there'll be many new jobs, and many of them will be working with machines. And generative AI is being used across the organization. McKinsey and Company performed a study, and they looked at, where is generative AI being utilized today? And it really is across the entire organization. Now, there are some departments within an organization that are using it more, like in sales and marketing and software engineering, customer service and operations. So you'll see generative AI being used quite broadly. It's actually being integrated in many of the tools used by those professionals. So if you use a customer relationship management system or a marketing automation platform, or if you use a development environment as a coding professional, all those platforms for those various professions now many times include generative AI capabilities. So again, we have to understand that those jobs will just continue to use more and more of general artificial intelligence. One's in jobs in finance, legal, pricing, strategy, procurement, supply chain, etc. They're using it. They may not be using it as heavily currently as some of these other roles are, but it's expected to grow. The fact is generative AI is going to be pervasive throughout the organization. And when we start to look at generative AI across how we apply it, I'm going to give you a few different examples here. One is in customer engagement or customer service. Salesforce.com is a great example. So Salesforce is one of the larger customer relationship management platforms. They provide for sales capabilities, marketing, and service capabilities. And they've actually included generative AI for customer service to create more personalized experiences for their customers. So generative AI can recognize inputs and create novel outputs. They can make certain recommendations. They can actually help you generate knowledge articles and a host of other content that will allow you to better serve your customers. So Salesforce has implemented it. They're with ChatGPT. They're now looking at some other. I talked about Mistral, the French company that has produced another model. They've actually invested in that platform as well. But they have already integrated generative AI in their platforms and will expect to use it more. Another is in marketing. So HubSpot is a major marketing automation platform provider. And so they are now using generative AI in their platform. And you can see people some of their customers are using it for social media posts, writing product descriptions, right? Product descriptions is difficult to write at times, right? Wouldn't it be great to have a tool to help you to do that? And that's what generative AI can do. It can help you generate emails, images, blog posts, as we saw, landing pages for your website, other content marketing collateral such as ebooks and white papers and more. So the fact is that these generative AI tools can help you generate new content. There was a study that was completed and said, hey, does generative AI really reduce the amount of time it takes to create content? like a blog post or an email. And what they found is that it does decrease the actual total effort by over a third. So it was 37%, I think the studies showed. What was interesting is where it decreased the time was in the ideation, right? Coming up with an idea, the actual initial draft, those steps in the process were much compressed. What actually lengthened was editing. You spent more time editing, but that's because you hadn't created the original content. But even with that said, even with spending more time editing, still you're going to save over a third of your time actually using a generative AI tool in a marketing function. And then also coding, I alluded to this earlier. So now Microsoft within their dev environment, Google and many others now have generative AI embedded in those platforms. So you can do things like completing code. You can help write database queries, perform mathematical operations, especially as we talk more about data science and machine learning. One of the challenges that some coding professionals have is with more advanced math. And so it can help you with that. It can help you with errors and error handling. If you need to refactor code, it also can help you write unit tests. So if I would have done that earlier, you would have saw whether we're using BART or ChatGPT, when I wrote that Python code for the if-then statements with 3 variables, I could said, all right, now write a unit test. And also document, right? Being able to notate my code and write documents that actually, whether it's technical documentation, requirements, et cetera, having the ability to do that as well. And there's so much more. I just took this from Google's website, and these are several large Google customers that are using generative AI. Wendy's, which is a fast food chain, they are piloting Google Cloud generative AI to create an automated and efficient drive-through experience. So as you drive through to order and pick up your food, they're going to look to enhance that experience. Priceline, where you can purchase tickets, whether for hotels or other travel. They're looking at how you can enhance trip planning with generative AI. GE, which provides a number of products and services, but also GE has appliances, and some of those appliances are associated with cooking. So they're looking at using generative AI to create custom recipes for their customers as well. So just a few examples of how generative AI is being applied. Again, there's many more examples. It's the number of examples and case studies is growing by the day, but it gives you a sense of how widespread the use of generative AI is today and how far-ranging it can be in the future as well. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Frederick. He's going to take us through the next couple sections, and then I'll close it out as we get into the Q&A.
Hello, thank you very much, Jeff, for the insightful delivery. Okay, so I'll take it from here. So next slide. Okay, so I think, and you can deduce this from the delivery of Jeff. You can see that by Gartner, by research they said by 2024, the use of synthetic data created with generative AI will have the volume of real data needed for machine learning. What it means is that we'll have more of synthetic data coming up instead of real data. By 2025, more than 30% of new drugs and materials will be systematically discovered using generative AI. What it means is that we are going to get a quicker time of getting some vaccines in. And also by 2025, more than 30% of new drugs and materials will be systematically discovered using generative AI. And by 2026, code written by developers, and as Jeff exhibited, it will be reduced by 50% due to generative AI code generation. What it means is that quickly we can generate codes using generative AI. Next slide. Okay, so what are some of the impacts we are talking about here? We should realize that in terms of democratization of work and redistribution of workload, generative AI is going to really change that. Some people are saying that with the introduction of generative AI, people are going to lose their job. I believe that those who don't rather learn the generative AI, they will rather lose their job. Because one of the potential impacts of generative AI is that it will augment rather than really destroy jobs. What it means is that human job and people are going to really coexist. We are going to need the generative AI for us to be more effective in what we do. So, for example, generative AI could help journalists, teachers, health workers to generate and customize content data and insight for their audiences, students, and patients. It could also enable new forms of entertainment, education, communication, such as virtual reality, interactive storytelling, and personalized learning. So here it means we'll need a generative AI to really help us to be more efficient in the work we do. Next slide, please. Then we talk about the generative AI impact on skill set and competency for future workforce. Here, the focus is that one of the potential impacts of generative AI is that it could augment rather than destroy jobs. And here we are saying that generative AI is that it could change the skills and competencies required for workers in the future. And according to World Economic Forum, generative AI could affect the tax and jobs about 5.5% of total employment in high-income countries. And for the low-income countries, approximately 1%. So this means that at least we need to get ourselves exposed to generative AI, whether we like it or not. I'm sure when smartphone came in, when even electricity started, this is a time for us to get ourselves involved in generative AI. And here we see that the most exposed occupational groups will be the clerical workers, especially women who may face automation of routine linguistic tasks. On the other hand, the most benefited occupational groups will be those involved in critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, especially in the field of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That is the STEM. So therefore, I think it's very important that we need to reskill and upskill to adapt to the changing demands of labor markets, as well as to leverage opportunities offered by generative AI. Next slide, please. Now, it will also have some impact on ethical, social, and economic challenges. As much as there are some benefits in there, we should also realize that it will bring some challenges in terms of how we use generative AI. I remember that when even social media started, people are using it for the good, other people are using it for the bad. So it's very important that generative AI could offer important benefits for developing countries, especially for us in Africa, for improving access to information, education, health service, as well as fostering innovation and entrepreneurship. However, it could also pose some risks. And these risks we are talking about increasing inequality, unemployment, digital divide, as well as generating fake or harmful content and data insights, because then people will give wrong commands to really do harmful things. So therefore, it's essential that to design and implement policies and regulations that will support an orderly, fair, and consultative transformation to generative AI, as well as to ensure that it responds to our ethical use. So this may require that the involvement of multiple stakeholders, such as government, businesses, workers, educators, really look at the impact and try to frame regulations to govern how generative AI should be used. At least when you go to the Europes, I know that US, in the UK, they are putting up or bringing up regulations to really govern generative AI. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some success stories in specifically the focus here was on Africa. At least when you come to Jumia, Africa, e-commerce giant, they are implementing generative AI for demand forecasting, which has resulted in the reduction of stockouts and overstock, which means currently people are using generative AI. The enterprise, the corporate bodies are using generative AI. And also DHL Africa has also adopted an interactive AI for real-time supply chain visibility, allowing customers to track their shipments accurately. And this increased the customer satisfaction and also improve company's overall service quality. At the end of the day, what it means is that it will improve demand forecasting. It will bring out an efficient route planning and last mile delivery, which means that generative AI can optimize the route planning and the last mile delivery, particularly important, especially in the African logistics area. It will also enhance inventory management and also reduce operational costs. This is just one area talking about logistics, inventory, and we haven't even mentioned about the medical side. And these are stuff which are really happening already in Africa, which means generative AI is really supporting industries in Africa. Next slide, please. Some specific country successes. When you come to Ghana, some people are doing some wonderful stuff with generative AI. Mazuma GPT. What they are doing is that they have trained a popular blockchain language called Solidity and Plutus, and they officially launched it June this year, and it helps developers to generate smart contract code. And when they launched it in the first month, roughly 400 developers and approximately 70 countries used this Mazuma GTP, and you can check it online. And more than 10,000 developers are still on their waiting list trying to have access to the Mazuma GPT doing the world programming. When you also go to South Africa, they're also doing wonderful stuff in terms of a company called IPOSCAP, where they help financial professionals and investors to make better decisions faster with AI. So what they do is that the company's first product that they call the Finance GPT is a generative AI solution that helps traders, portfolio managers, and company and support financial personnel to perform financial analysis. So which means that they have been able to put up a generative AI, and this is really helping them to analyze their financial data. And what they do is that they upload the company's financial statement into the Finance ChatGPT and generate reports and dashboards that allow them to easily understand the current state of the business and also give them some future forecast. And when you also happen to go to the north of Africa, that's precisely Tunisia, there's an enterprise AI startup called InstaDeep. And what they are doing is that they are using in the scientific world where the problem is that they have a protein design in challenging and computational expensive. So what it means is that in doing this, it takes a lot of time. It's very time consuming. It relies on human expertise to design it, and also it gives a brutal force method. But the solution generative AI is giving them is that it's being fast, it's scalable, which means powered approach and can get greater results in days, which doesn't take longer time. And also it helps in automating scoring and evaluation pipeline, and also learns biology and protein designs from the first principle of science. So here we are saying that generative AI, like the internet or electricity, before it is the general purpose that technology that has a wide variety of application across industries. And Africa focused business leaders must do well to pay attention to the ongoing AI revolution. And I believe that if Africa, where we have most of our youth being the largest population, and we believe that the youth of Africa can really take advantage of generative AI to really benefit the continent as a whole. Jen, next slide, please. So I think, Jeff, you take over from here. Yeah.
Thank you, Frederick. And as Frederick was sharing, is that much like we have mobile skills today and internet skills, we're going to need to develop skills around generative artificial intelligence, whether that's as a user of it in marketing, sales, or product management, project management professional, whatever it may be, or as a development professional, whether we're using it to develop code or developing generative AI solutions. As Frederick also noted, that we're also seeing more and more platforms becoming available. Obviously, ChatGPT was the first, but it's not the only one. And many of these other models that are being created are smaller. They still produce really very valid results and may be more attuned to specific needs, whether that's regional, industry perspective, et cetera. So if you are interested in learning more about artificial intelligence, obviously, CertNexus, we have a portfolio of solutions that can help you do that, that are available through FredExcel. For those who just need to understand the foundational concepts, right? You're not going to go on into becoming a machine learning engineer or data scientist. You can do that with our AI Biz, which gives a foundational understanding of artificial intelligence, Gen AI Biz, which does the same for generative AI. And as Frederick also brought up, there's obviously, we need to understand some of the ethical responsibilities and potential challenges, and we start to do that in our DE Biz. For those who want to move into a career in artificial intelligence, you're going to need to have some programming skills. So if you don't already have some, you're going to want to take a programming course. And Python is probably the most widely used language in artificial intelligence. You're also going to need to pick up some data skills. AI is highly dependent on data. So even though if you don't become a data scientist, you're still going to need to understand some basic data science skills around wrangling data, cleansing data, extracting, transforming, loading data, et cetera. So that's a skill set you're going to want to develop. Then you can move into the vendor neutral certification from CertNexus, which is our certified AI practitioner. And this is really to develop someone to become a machine learning engineer. And then you may want to go on into various vendor specific certifications. It's not a requirement, but sometimes organizations are using certain platforms and you want to gain more skills around those products. So to do that as well. And then we have our certified ethical emerging technologists for those who want to take a deeper dive into the ethical portions of artificial intelligence and become an AI ethicist or a data ethicist, et cetera. And that will help prepare you for those job roles. The AI is one part of the CertNexus portfolio that is available from FredExcel. There's a broader set of technologies here, including data ethics, data science, the Internet of Things or IoT, and cybersecurity as well. So with that, we're going to open it up for Q&A. We'd ask you to input any questions into the chat field. I always say the first question is the best question because it gets us rolling. So I challenge someone to ask the first question. It can be about anything that we discussed in today's session or related to generative AI or artificial intelligence in general, and we'll work to answer those questions for you. And every question's a good one.
Sure. Maybe, Jeff, since you also introduced the course outline, let me also mention that FredExcel also giving a discount on getting certified with a generative base, a discount of 30%. So those who are interested can really contact us. I'll put a link in the chat and they can connect us so that they can take the course and get certified in generative AI base.
Right. Any questions? Any further demonstrations of the generative AI platforms? Anything else? Anyone? Here we go. Is there any regulators of AI in Africa? And last week in EU, they came up with the AI Act. Godfrey, really good question. There are initiatives around the globe to further regulate AI. Godfrey mentions the EU AI Act. For those who aren't aware, the European Union last week, they came to conclusion on a multi-year process to put forth an act called what they're calling the AI Act. This is to help regulate AI. And the intent is not to stifle innovation. They want companies to continue to invest in AI and to utilize AI, but they want to reduce the potential harm from artificial intelligence. And so they have created a framework and a regulation in which they will enact over the next couple of years, and expect any company that's doing significant business with the EU to be in compliance. There are other regulations across the world. I don't know any specific within Africa. Frederick, I'm not sure if you know if there is any in Africa right now. I know there's some in the Middle East and Asia and other parts of Europe at this point in time.
No, currently we don't have. There's currently discussions going on from various countries trying to come up with a regulating to really govern AI in Africa. Currently we don't have. I know there has been some discussion from the South Africa and also from Ghana. I know Ghana even tomorrow there is a meeting around generative AI regulation. So it's still under discussion. We don't currently have a regulation on it currently.
Yeah, and we don't in the U.S. either. And that's a concern because so much of AI is being developed out of the U.S. So how can one promote? So Caleb asks, how can one promote the uses of AI in their country? And what's interesting, Caleb, is that most of us are using artificial intelligence to some extent today. It just has not, it's been hidden behind a layer of technology. So if you think about it, if you're using any type of streaming platform, whether that's for video or audio, et cetera, they use recommendation engines, which are all powered by artificial intelligence. If you're actually purchasing a product on a large online retailer, they're going to be using dynamic pricing, which is again all typically backed by artificial intelligence. When we see autocomplete, whether it's in our email or on text, that's again powered by artificial intelligence. So the fact is, we're using it today. What I think we're not seeing is organizations that are talking about its use when they're using it as a part of a platform. And now with generative AI, it's more in the forefront. And so now we're thinking, how can organizations use generative AI? Because that's something we all feel like we're participating in, as opposed to just kind of, I don't want to say blindly using, but having AI be in the background. So what I would say is that to answer your question is that I think the first is education, is to have people understanding what artificial intelligence is, how it can be used, and then starting with really small, simple pilot projects. And so, we shared some today, Frederick and I did, that organizations are doing, and you'll see that with these small projects, you can actually provide a proof of concept that it can be utilized, et cetera. We are at CertNexus, we're using it in our marketing department. We're identifying when we're using it. And so if we post an article that's been generated initially by generative AI, we tag it as such. But again, that's a small way to do that. And, obviously at a national level, it really will be, whether it's governments or large companies, it's really starting small and working from there. Great question. Another question, that's a really good statement. Frederick stated, AI won't replace people, but people who use AI will replace people who don't. And that's true. AI can perform tasks. People decide what tasks AI is going to perform. And so to Frederick's point, and thank you, Frederick, for making that statement, is that we'll decide what tasks we replace with AI and whether those tasks comprise a job or not. So it is one of those things where, many of us, right, if you don't have computer skills today, your opportunities are more limited than if you have computer skills. It's the same thing with artificial intelligence. We talked about the EU AI Act. Benjamin's asked, what considerations should organizations keep in mind when implementing generative AI solutions or for creative purposes? Benjamin, I started to allude to it, how we utilize it is, first off, you need to be upfront with your customers or partners when you're using generative AI. So if you created an image or created a blog post or a white paper, say this was created with generative AI, right? Because you want to be honest with your constituents. The other is that when you're utilizing these tools, you need to make sure it's reflecting your organizational, not only your products and services, but your culture, right? So does it represent your brand well? Is it misrepresenting anything? Is there any misinformation or disinformation that could be potentially be harmful? Is the model, is it accurate? Right? These are all things that you need to do. And this is what we call having a human in the loop. You should never actually create or generate content without having a person reviewing that content. So those are some things that, come immediately to mind, for organizations. But again, like any use of technology, you should have general policies and procedures about how you use it. One policy that we have, for example, is we do not put any of our intellectual property into these models. So as when we're doing a prompt, we would not input anything that we deem that would be our own intellectual property, something we want to safeguard, because we don't know how the models are going to treat that as well. So that's another consideration that organizations may want to look at. So Felice asks, if I take a course in AI, am I going to learn how to use AI apps, or am I going to study how to develop apps that use AI? It depends on the course that you take. So our foundational courses, you're going to learn about AI. So how you're going to learn terminology. So you're going to take a deeper dive into artificial intelligence and look at machine learning and deep learning and various forms of machine learning, like supervised, unsupervised, et cetera. And then you're going to learn how you can apply AI for use in business, and what are some of the opportunities and challenges associated with that. As you move into our technical programs, you are going to start to do things like select an algorithm. You're going to train an algorithm. You're going to then operationalize that algorithm and monitor it once it's been deployed. So you're going to really learn how to become a machine learning engineer. And so those are things that you're going to do in our technical courses, like our certified AI practitioner course. So that is, the outside of that, you should be able to go and actually create a model for a variety of uses. D asks, are there any notable case studies of success stories highlighting the impact of generative AI on unleashing creativity? And indeed, there is. I alluded to HubSpot as a good example of that. They have a number of case studies of customers that are using it for marketing purposes. But obviously, you can use it for not just marketing, but a variety of other purposes, right? One of the things that we have to think about, is can we use this for other creative endeavors like generating potentially art, works of writing, etc. Again, there's a lot of discussion around this, whether the legalities of doing that or not, because these models have been trained on potentially copyrighted materials, etc. So there's some things we have to take into consideration. With that said, we also there is a lot of creative things that we can do in our everyday jobs, right? So again, if you're a product manager and you want to create a product description, if you are in a supply chain management role, right, and you need to create essentially some policies and procedures, right? That even though it might seem not very creative, you still that there is some level of creativity that has to occur there, and that's where we're going to see humans with interacting and being augmented. And really, that's what generative AI is doing. It's augmenting what we do as humans. It can help us with that creative process, that ideation, that initial first draft. It can help us get some, words on paper, per se, and get those initial, thoughts rolling that we can then add on to as well. Let me see. I'm just going through questions. Next one. Can anyone study AI, or do you need a science background first? So anyone can study artificial intelligence. So at least at that foundational level, everyone should be studying artificial intelligence to some degree. Again, this is knowledge and skills that everyone is going to have as we move forward. As far as becoming a machine learning engineer or a deep learning engineer, etc., what you will need to do is you will need to pick up some programming skills. And you'll also need to have an understanding of math. You don't have to have a mathematics degree, but you will need to understand some certain concepts with statistics, probability, various types of multivariate calculus and stuff. But what we can say is generative AI is going to help us with a lot of that, as we learned in those tool sets as well. So don't shy away from pursuing a career in artificial intelligence because you don't have a mathematics degree. These are things, some knowledge you can pick up along the way, as well as with their tools to help us as we move forward as well. We talked about that question. Just going through, I think that's our last question that we have right now.
Yes, I guess so. Unless there's any new question in there. I guess that's our last question which came in. I don't know if from our audience there's more questions. But I would like to take this opportunity to tell those who are interested in getting certified in generative AI base. There's some generative AI for business professionals. I've put in a link in there. They can complete it and we'll get in touch with them with the materials and organize a course for you so that you get certified in CertNexus generative AI base. And note that CertNexus is internationally recognized. It's a non-neutral body in emerging technologies. And if you can have that certification, at least it puts you ahead and lets you understand the basics of generative AI.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time today. I hope this session was beneficial to you. And as Frederick said, there is an opportunity to study more and to learn more about generative AI and also more broadly about artificial intelligence as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you for the support, and we appreciate it. Bye. So please, those who are interested can really fill the form in there and sign on.